Jasmine Wilson stood frozen as shreds of her passport fluttered to the counter. The gate agent's smirk vanished when she revealed her Federal Aviation Administration badge. "This airport is now under immediate investigation," she announced, already typing a message to headquarters. Her 3-month undercover operation had just paid off. Before we dive into this shocking story of justice served, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination at an airport, and subscribe to see more stories of powerful comebacks against injustice. Now, let's rewind to see how this incredible moment of vindication came to be. The fluorescent lights in the Federal Aviation Administration headquarters buzzed overhead as Jasmine Wilson tapped her foot anxiously outside her supervisor's office. At 35, with 12 years of distinguished service as an FAA inspector, Jasmine had handled numerous high-profile cases, but something about this sudden summons felt different. "Come in, Jasmine," Lawrence Bennett called, his voice carrying through the heavy wooden door. Lawrence, a stern but fair supervisor in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, gestured for her to take a seat. His office walls were adorned with certificates, awards, and family photos, the trappings of a man who had dedicated his life to aviation safety. "I've got something sensitive," Lawrence began, sliding a thick folder across his desk. "Take a look at this data." Jasmine opened the folder and found spreadsheets, complaint forms, and statistical analyses. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. "These are all from Jefferson International Airport in Atlanta?" Lawrence nodded grimly. "We've received an alarming number of discrimination complaints against black passengers over the past 18 months. The numbers are statistically impossible to be coincidence." Jasmine flipped through page after page of formal complaints. Passengers subjected to random additional screenings, delayed without explanation, questioned about legitimate documentation, and even denied boarding on flimsy pretexts. "The pattern is clear," Lawrence continued, "but we haven't been able to gather concrete evidence. Airport management claims these are isolated incidents or misunderstandings." Jasmine felt a knot forming in her stomach. This wasn't just bureaucratic incompetence. This appeared to be systematic discrimination. "That's where you come in," Lawrence said, leaning forward. "We need someone to go undercover as a regular traveler, document everything, build us a case that can't be dismissed." Jasmine inhaled sharply. Undercover work wasn't common in her division, but she immediately understood why Lawrence had chosen her. As one of the few black women in her position, she could experience firsthand what other travelers had reported. "I'll do it," she said firmly. But inside, she felt a flutter of anxiety. This assignment hit closer to home than Lawrence realized. Just last year, her younger sister Danielle had a traumatic experience at that very airport, publicly humiliated when agents claimed her passport looked suspicious, despite being perfectly valid. Lawrence's expression softened momentarily. "I know this won't be easy, Jasmine, but you're the best person for this job." For the next 3 hours, Jasmine met with the undercover operations team. They crafted her cover identity. Jasmine would pose as a marketing executive for a fictional company, necessitating frequent travel through Jefferson International. "These are your new accessories," said Diana Fletcher, the tech specialist, presenting Jasmine with an array of seemingly ordinary items. "This watch has a high-definition camera. These earrings contain microphones. Your necklace houses a backup recording device." Jasmine picked up a stylish pen. "Let me guess. Recording device?" Diana nodded. "Activated by clicking 3 times quickly. All footage uploads automatically to our secure server." As the briefing concluded, Lawrence pulled Jasmine aside. "Remember, maintain your cover at all costs until we have sufficient evidence. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or experience, you cannot reveal yourself prematurely." "I understand," Jasmine replied, her resolve strengthening. This wasn't just about doing her job anymore. This was personal. That evening, in her apartment, Jasmine sat at her kitchen table reviewing her cover identity. Marketing executive Jasmine Wilson. traveling frequently for client meetings. She memorized the details of her fictional company and clients, practiced responses to potential questions, and studied the layout of Jefferson International Airport. As she prepared for bed, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from Danielle. "Dinner this weekend?" Jasmine stared at the message, realizing she wouldn't be able to tell her sister about this assignment. Not yet. She texted back a simple, "Can't this weekend. Swamped with work. Soon." Lying in bed that night, Jasmine thought about all the passengers who had filed complaints only to be ignored or dismissed. She thought about her sister's humiliation. She thought about her own experiences with discrimination throughout her life and career. By morning, her determination had solidified into steel. In 1 week, she would board her first flight as an undercover FAA inspector. Whatever discrimination awaited her at Jefferson International, Jasmine Wilson would be ready. The sprawling architecture of Jefferson International Airport came into view as Jasmine's taxi approached the departures terminal. Glass and steel gleamed in the early morning Georgia sunlight, presenting an image of modern efficiency and welcome. But Jasmine knew appearances could be deceiving. "First time flying through Jefferson?" the taxi driver asked, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "No," Jasmine replied, thinking of her sister's experience. "Not my first time?" Inside the terminal, Jasmine took a moment to activate her recording devices before joining the security line. She observed with professional detachment as white passengers moved swiftly through the checkpoint while travelers of color were consistently pulled aside for random additional screening. When her turn came, the TSA agent barely glanced at her ID before waving her toward the full-body scanner. After passing through, a female agent approached. "Ma'am, you've been randomly selected for additional screening." Random. There was that word again. Jasmine complied silently as the agent patted her down thoroughly, opened her meticulously packed carry-on, and swabbed her belongings for explosive residue. Around her, 3 other randomly selected passengers were all people of color. "Happens every time," a voice beside her said quietly. Jasmine turned to see a tall, well-dressed black man in his 40s gathering his belongings after his own random screening. "Nathan Reed," he introduced himself with a resigned smile. "Atlanta to Chicago twice monthly for the past 3 years, and randomly selected approximately 90% of those times." "Jasmine Wilson," she replied, carefully maintaining her cover. "That seems statistically improbable." Nathan laughed without humor. "Welcome to Jefferson International, where the only thing not random is who gets randomly selected." As they walked toward their gates, Nathan shared his survival tactics for frequent minority travelers. Always arrive 2 hours early, even for domestic flights. Dress business professional. It sometimes helps, though not always. Keep all documents easily accessible. Never argue, no matter how unfair the treatment. Jasmine listened carefully, asking questions that would seem natural from a fellow traveler while mentally documenting everything. "Your first time through Jefferson?" Nathan asked. "Yes," Jasmine lied, feeling a twinge of guilt at deceiving this friendly stranger. "Well, brace yourself for the gate experience. Depending on who's working, it can be..." He trailed off as raised voices caught their attention. A black family, parents with 3 young children, were engaged in a tense conversation with a TSA agent at a nearby checkpoint. "Sir, I've shown you our documents 3 times now," the father said, frustration evident in his voice, but clearly trying to remain calm. "And I'm telling you something doesn't look right," the TSA agent, whose name badge read Calvin Porter, replied with unconcealed hostility. "Step aside for additional verification." "Our flight boards in 20 minutes, the mother pleaded, trying to comfort her youngest child, who had begun crying. "Should have thought of that before you tried to rush through security," Calvin snapped. Jasmine's hand instinctively moved to her watch, ensuring it was recording. This was exactly the type of incident she was here to document. "That's Calvin Porter," Nathan whispered. "One of the worst. He's been here for years, makes traveling miserable for folks who look like us." After 15 more minutes of unnecessary scrutiny, the family was finally allowed through, now at serious risk of missing their flight. They rushed off, parents carrying children toward their gate. "I should get going too," Nathan said, checking his watch. "I'm at gate B22. "I'm heading to B26 myself," Jasmine replied. "Mind if we walk together? I can point out more of the Jefferson Welcoming Committee along the way." As they navigated the busy terminal, Nathan discreetly indicated certain staff members. "That supervisor there, Ronald Thompson? He protects the worst offenders. And see the blonde gate agent at B18? Victoria Slater, absolute nightmare for passengers of color." Jasmine committed every name and face to memory as they approached her gate. "This is me," she said, stopping at B26. "Good luck," Nathan offered with a knowing look. "Maybe see you on the return flight." At gate B26, Jasmine took a seat with a clear view of the counter. The gate agent, a middle-aged white woman whose nameplate read Victoria Slater, was processing boarding passes for a flight to Dallas. Jasmine observed as Victoria warmly greeted white passengers, chatting amiably and efficiently processing their documents. When passengers of color approached, her demeanor changed dramatically. Curt responses, excessive scrutiny of identification, and deliberate slowness that caused an obvious bottleneck. When Jasmine's boarding group was called, she approached the counter with her documents ready. Victoria's smile vanished as Jasmine stepped forward. "Boarding pass and ID," Victoria demanded without making eye contact. Jasmine provided both promptly. Victoria examined them with exaggerated thoroughness, holding the documents up to the light, comparing Jasmine's face to her ID photo multiple times. "Is there a problem?" Jasmine asked pleasantly. "Just doing my job," Victoria replied coldly. "Wait here." Victoria set Jasmine's documents aside and proceeded to assist 3 white passengers who had arrived after Jasmine. Each was processed quickly and sent on their way with a friendly, "Have a nice flight." Finally, after nearly causing Jasmine to miss boarding, Victoria reluctantly returned her documents. "You can board now," she said dismissively. On the plane, Jasmine settled into her seat and observed another pattern. The flight attendant, whose name badge read Rebecca Mills, consistently ignored requests from passengers of color while promptly serving white passengers. When Jasmine pressed her call button to request water, Rebecca walked past repeatedly, despite making eye contact. 15 minutes later, when a white passenger pressed his button, Rebecca appeared instantly with a smile. That evening in her hotel room, Jasmine called Lawrence on her secure line. "It's worse than we thought," she reported. "The discrimination is blatant and widespread. I've documented multiple incidents just on day 1. "Good work," Lawrence replied. "But we need more. We need to establish patterns, identify key perpetrators, and gather irrefutable evidence of policy violations." "I understand," Jasmine said, determination in her voice. "I'm just getting started." As she prepared for bed, Jasmine reviewed the day's recordings, making detailed notes on each incident. What she'd witnessed today was just the tip of the iceberg. She could feel it, and she was going to uncover it all. Have you ever felt that gut-wrenching feeling when you know something deeply unjust is happening but struggle to prove it? Comment number 1 if you've ever been in a situation where discrimination was obvious but difficult to document. What would you have done in Jasmine's position? Like this video. If you believe undercover operations are sometimes necessary to expose systemic discrimination, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of justice prevailing against all odds. Now, let's see how Jasmine builds her case against the discriminatory practices at Jefferson International Airport. 2 weeks into her investigation, Jasmine sat cross-legged on her hotel bed surrounded by notebooks, her laptop open to a spreadsheet tracking every incident she'd witnessed or experienced. The patterns were becoming unmistakable. 3 main perpetrators, she muttered to herself, reviewing her notes. Victoria Slater, Gregory Howard, and Patricia Montgomery. Her spreadsheet contained dozens of documented incidents. Victoria had delayed or excessively questioned 27 black passengers in the past 2 weeks alone. Gregory Howard, a heavy-set gate agent with a military-style haircut, had denied boarding to 4 passengers of color over documentation concerns that magically resolved themselves after their flights departed. Patricia Montgomery, a thin woman with a perpetual pinched expression, specialized in losing the reservations of minority passengers. Jasmine took a sip of lukewarm hotel room coffee and stretched her neck. The investigation was yielding results, but it was also taking a toll. Each day meant hours of witnessing discrimination, recording it, and maintaining her cover while suppressing her natural instinct to intervene. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Flying back tomorrow. Same flight?" Over the past 2 weeks, Nathan had unwittingly become a valuable source of information. As a frequent flyer through Jefferson International, his observations helped Jasmine identify patterns she might have missed. "Yes, see you there," she texted back, feeling another pang of guilt about her deception. The next morning, Jasmine arrived at the airport early and headed to a coffee shop near her usual gate. She had noticed a janitor there several times, an older black man who seemed to observe everything while remaining nearly invisible to passengers and staff alike. As he cleaned nearby tables, Jasmine struck up a conversation. "You've been working here a long time." The janitor, Walter Johnson according to his ID badge, looked surprised to be addressed directly. 15 years next month," he replied cautiously. "You must see a lot," Jasmine suggested. Walter's eyes narrowed slightly. "I do. Question is, why are you asking?" Jasmine leaned forward. "Because I've been traveling through this airport regularly for the past 2 weeks, and I've noticed some patterns." Walter's posture relaxed slightly. "Those aren't new patterns, miss. Been the same song for years." Over the next 20 minutes, Walter shared his observations, speaking quietly while pretending to clean the same area. He described how complaints to management routinely disappeared, how certain agents were protected despite years of problematic behavior. "Ronald Thompson," Walter said, naming the supervisor Nathan had pointed out earlier. "He shields the worst offenders, promotes them even." "Has anyone ever investigated?" Jasmine asked carefully. Walter gave a bitter laugh. "Airport management investigates itself and finds no wrongdoing. Tale as old as time." "What about the employee lounge?" Jasmine asked, recalling a door she'd noticed marked "Staff Only." "That's where they speak freely," Walter confirmed. "No passengers, no cameras. You hear the real talk in there." As they parted ways, Walter gave her a long look. "You're not just a regular passenger, are you?" Jasmine maintained her cover. "Just someone who pays attention." Walter nodded. "Well, whoever you are, be careful. These people protect their own." That afternoon, Jasmine implemented a new strategy. Using a bathroom near the staff lounge, she placed one of her specialized recording devices on the underside of a vending machine directly outside the lounge door. 2 hours later, she retrieved it and listened to the recording in a private corner of the terminal. "Did you see that family at B12? Victoria's voice was unmistakable. "Tried to tell me their 5-year-old needed medical accommodation." "What did you do?" Gregory's deeper voice replied. "Said the documentation wasn't sufficient. Made them miss their connection." Victoria laughed. "Should have seen their faces." "You're terrible," Gregory said, but his tone was admiring rather than reproachful. "Please," Victoria scoffed. "Ronald says we're just maintaining standards. Not our fault if certain people can't meet them." Jasmine's heart raced as she continued listening. This was exactly the kind of evidence they needed. Staff openly discussing discriminatory practices. Over the next few days, Jasmine expanded her investigation, documenting how Ronald Thompson held weekly training sessions where specific techniques for targeting minority passengers were disguised as security protocols. Her careful observation revealed a coded system. Gate agents would mark certain boarding passes with nearly invisible symbols indicating which passengers should receive additional scrutiny or delays. The investigation hit a brief snag when Jasmine nearly collided with Eric Daniels, a former FAA colleague visiting Jefferson International for an official inspection. She ducked into a shop just in time to avoid recognition, but the close call reminded her of the stakes involved. That evening, Jasmine compiled her evidence into an encrypted update for Lawrence. The file included Documentation of 38 separate discriminatory incidents, audio recordings of staff discussions, evidence of the coded boarding pass system, testimony from Walter about buried complaints, details of Ronald Thompson's training sessions. Lawrence's response came quickly. Excellent work. We're building a solid case, but we need more definitive proof of policy violations. Something that can't be explained away as individual behavior. Jasmine read the message twice, understanding what wasn't explicitly stated. They needed evidence of discrimination so blatant, so undeniable, that it would withstand any attempt to dismiss it. They needed someone in authority explicitly approving or directing discriminatory actions. And Jasmine was beginning to formulate a plan to get exactly that. Are you shocked by what Jasmine has uncovered so far? Comment number 1. If you've ever witnessed similar coded systems of discrimination in everyday life. Have you ever noticed different treatment based on race at airports, stores, or other public places? Hit the like button if you admire Jasmine's determination to gather evidence despite the personal toll, and subscribe to follow her journey toward exposing this injustice. What do you think will happen when Jasmine finally confronts those responsible? Let's continue to find out. Each night in her hotel room, Jasmine performed the same ritual. Review the day's footage, update her case files, and try to shake off what she'd witnessed. But lately, the third part of that routine was becoming increasingly difficult. Tonight, she stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back had dark circles under her eyes and a tension in her jaw that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. The constant exposure to discrimination was affecting her more than she'd anticipated. Sleep had become elusive. When it did come, it was filled with dreams where she was trapped in endless security lines while faceless agents tore up her identification. She'd wake up with her heart racing, sometimes having to remind herself that she wasn't actually powerless. She was here on a mission. Jasmine splashed cold water on her face and reached for her personal phone. After a moment's hesitation, she dialed her sister. "Jay?" Danielle's voice was warm and surprised. "I was just thinking about you. How's work?" "Challenging," Jasmine replied truthfully, careful not to reveal details of her assignment. "How are you doing?" "Really doing?" There was a pause on the line. "Is this about what happened at the airport last year?" Jasmine closed her eyes. "I've been thinking about it." Danielle sighed. "I'm okay now, but honestly, I still get anxious every time I have to fly." The memories surfaced with painful clarity. Danielle, excited about her vacation to Mexico, being pulled aside at the very same Jefferson International Airport. The gate agent, Jasmine, now recognized from photos that it had been Patricia Montgomery, loudly proclaiming Danielle's passport looked suspicious. The humiliating public inspection, the missed flight, the tears. "They made me feel like a criminal," Danielle said quietly. "Like I didn't belong there. Like I didn't have the right to travel like everyone else." Jasmine gripped the phone tighter. "I'm sorry that happened to you, Danny. It's not your fault." Danielle paused. "Jay, is everything okay? You sound stressed." "Just work," Jasmine assured her. "I'll tell you all about it soon, I promise." After hanging up, Jasmine lay on the hotel bed staring at the ceiling. The conversation had only strengthened her resolve, but it had also intensified the emotional weight of the investigation. The next day at Jefferson International, Jasmine witnessed one of the most egregious incidents yet. An elderly black woman with a cane was denied wheelchair assistance by Victoria, despite having requested it in advance. "No record of your request," Victoria said coldly, while Jasmine observed from nearby. "Nothing I can do." The elderly woman, who could barely stand, pleaded for help. "Please, my boarding pass confirms I requested assistance." "Maybe you should have confirmed before arriving," Victoria replied dismissively, before turning to assist a white passenger who had just approached. Jasmine felt her professional detachment crumbling. She stepped forward, ready to intervene, ready to reveal herself as an FAA inspector. Consequences be damned. A hand on her arm stopped her. It was Nathan. "Not worth it," he said quietly. "They'll just make it worse for her." Instead, Nathan approached the elderly woman himself, offering to help her to her gate. As they walked away, he gave Jasmine a reassuring nod. Later, over coffee, Nathan noticed Jasmine's distress. It gets to you, doesn't it? The constant little indignities, the powerlessness. Jasmine nodded, unable to express how deeply it affected her, both as a black woman and as an investigator forced to witness injustice without immediate intervention. "I've been flying through this airport for years," Nathan continued. "At first, I thought I was imagining things. Then I started noticing the patterns, how consistent it was." He paused. "I've filed complaints. Nothing ever changes." Jasmine felt a renewed surge of guilt about deceiving Nathan, who had become something like a friend. He continued to share valuable information about the airport's operations, all while believing she was simply a fellow traveler. That afternoon, Jasmine witnessed Victoria denying a valid boarding pass to a black teenager traveling alone. "This doesn't look right," Victoria insisted, despite the pass having been issued by her own airline. "But I checked in online," the teenager explained, growing visibly anxious. "My mom dropped me off. She's already gone." "Not my problem," Victoria replied. "Step aside or I'll call security." When Jasmine approached, trying to offer assistance to the teen, Victoria turned her cold gaze toward her. "Mind your own business, or you'll be dealing with security too." Jasmine backed down, knowing that maintaining her cover was crucial to the larger mission. But as she watched the distraught teenager step aside, missing his flight while Victoria smirked, she made a decision. It was time to accelerate the investigation, time to move beyond documentation to direct action, time to set a trap that would expose not just individual acts of discrimination, but the systemic nature of the problem. That night, in her hotel room, Jasmine couldn't sleep. The faces of everyone she'd seen mistreated, the elderly woman, the teenager, countless others, swirled in her mind. She thought of Danielle, of Walter, of Nathan. She thought of herself, of the weight of carrying this investigation while suppressing her own reactions to the injustice she witnessed daily. But beneath the exhaustion and emotional toll, a new determination was forming. Jasmine Wilson had always been thorough, methodical, by the book. But now she understood that sometimes justice required a more direct approach. Tomorrow, she would begin implementing the final phase of her investigation. And this time, she wouldn't just be a witness to discrimination. She would become its target, deliberately and strategically, to expose the truth, once and for all. For almost a month, Jasmine had been meticulously documenting individual incidents of discrimination. But as she reviewed her evidence late one evening, a troubling realization dawned on her. What she was witnessing wasn't random bigotry. It was organized, systematic, and deliberate. The revelation came as she sorted through photographs of boarding passes belonging to passengers who had faced discrimination. Using a specialized light from her equipment kit, Jasmine noticed nearly invisible markings on certain passes, a small dot in the corner, a faint line under the gate number, a barely perceptible slash through a barcode digit. At first, she thought they might be printing anomalies, but after examining dozens of samples, a pattern emerged. These subtle marks appeared exclusively on boarding passes belonging to passengers of color who subsequently experienced delays, additional scrutiny, or boarding problems. "They're tagging them," Jasmine whispered to herself, the implications sinking in. This wasn't just individual bias. It was a coordinated system. The next morning, Jasmine positioned herself near the check-in counters with a clear view of the agents and their computer screens. She observed Victoria, Gregory, and Patricia selecting certain passengers for special processing, a euphemism that resulted in their boarding passes being printed with the nearly invisible markings. During her next flight simulation, Jasmine carefully observed the interactions between check-in staff, security personnel, and gate agents. She noticed subtle hand signals, code words, and the way marked boarding passes triggered a chain of discriminatory actions throughout the passenger's journey. Her suspicions were confirmed when she overheard Gregory speaking to a newer gate agent. Check for Thompson's tags before processing. Priority 1. Passengers get expedited service. Priority 3 passengers need additional verification. Jasmine needed to know more about these training sessions Nathan and Walter had mentioned. Using her cover as a frequent business traveler, she befriended a custodial worker named Alicia who had access to the administrative offices. The supervisors meet every Tuesday at 7 a.m., Alicia told her. Same conference room, always with the blinds closed. The following Tuesday, Jasmine arrived at the airport at 6 a.m., with Alicia's unwitting help creating a distraction, a spill that needed immediate attention. Jasmine slipped into the empty conference room and placed one of her most sophisticated recording devices behind a wall-mounted TV. That evening, she retrieved the device and listened to the recording in her hotel room. What she heard made her blood run cold. "Remember, we're not denying service." Ronald Thompson's voice was clear and authoritative. "We're simply applying additional security protocols to high-risk passengers." "But how do we identify high-risk passengers?" asked a voice Jasmine didn't recognize. "Use your judgment," Ronald replied. "Statistical probability suggests certain demographics require more scrutiny." "You mean black passengers?" someone stated bluntly. "I didn't say that," Ronald responded quickly. "But if you notice patterns in who tends to have documentation issues or security concerns, you should act accordingly." The recording continued with explicit instructions on how to create delays, question documentation, and make the experience difficult enough that problem passengers might choose other airports in the future. Jasmine's hands shook as she transcribed the recording. This wasn't just bias. This was a deliberate strategy to discourage certain passengers from using Jefferson International. Digging deeper, Jasmine discovered documentation showing the airport had received over 200 discrimination complaints in the past year alone. Yet the official response to regulatory inquiries reported only 12 customer service incidents with diversity elements. Through careful investigation, Jasmine learned that Airport Director Harold Parker received substantial bonuses for maintaining efficient processing times and high passenger satisfaction scores. By moving desirable passengers through quickly while deliberately slowing others, the airport created artificially impressive metrics. "They're gaming the system," Jasmine told Lawrence during their secure call, "fast-tracking some passengers at the expense of others, then burying the complaints." "Can you find documented evidence of valid passengers being rejected?" Lawrence asked. "That crosses the line from poor customer service to civil rights violations." Jasmine had already begun searching for such cases. Through Walter's connections, she gained access to the airport's incident report archive. There, she found evidence that 27 minority passengers had been denied boarding in the past year due to documentation irregularities, despite having perfectly valid identification and tickets. "They're targeting international travelers especially," Jasmine reported, claiming their passports look suspicious or have verification issues. Most of these passengers missed their flights. Some even had their documents temporarily confiscated. Lawrence was silent for a moment. "This is bigger than we anticipated, Jasmine. The evidence you've gathered is compelling, but we need something irrefutable. Something that demonstrates beyond any doubt that this is policy, not just bad actors." "I think I know how to get it," Jasmine replied. "An idea forming. But it's risky." "What are you thinking?" "I need to become the target," Jasmine explained. "I need to create a situation where they'll act against a passenger with impeccable documentation, me, in a way that cannot be explained away." "That's dangerous, Jasmine. If they discover who you are prematurely." "It's the only way to get definitive proof," Jasmine insisted. "I'll use my real passport and FAA credentials. If pushed to breaking point, I'll reveal myself and catch them in the act." Lawrence's concern was evident even over the phone. "Give me your exact plan. If we do this, we do it with proper backup and safeguards." As Jasmine outlined her strategy, she felt a mix of apprehension and determination. The discrimination she'd witnessed over the past month wasn't just unprofessional, it was dehumanizing and illegal, and she was now certain it stemmed from the highest levels of airport management. This would be her riskiest move yet, but also potentially the most effective. Jasmine Wilson was going to catch them red-handed, and in doing so, bring the entire discriminatory system crashing down. What would you risk to expose a system designed to discriminate against people who look like you? Comment number 1. If you believe Jasmine's plan to become the target herself is courageous or reckless, would you have the strength to put yourself in harm's way to gather evidence of injustice? Like this video if you admire whistleblowers who risk their careers to expose corruption, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of everyday heroes fighting against discrimination. Now, let's see how Jasmine prepares to spring her trap. In her hotel room, Jasmine meticulously planned every detail of her final operation. After a month of investigation, she had gathered substantial evidence of discrimination at Jefferson International Airport. But she needed the smoking gun, irrefutable proof that would stand up to any scrutiny or attempt at denial. On her laptop, she created a detailed timeline and checklist. 1. Book an international flight to London, higher scrutiny for documentation. 2. Ensure Victoria Slater is the gate agent, highest probability of discriminatory action. 3. Wear multiple recording devices, primary, backup, and emergency backup. 4. Position FAA colleagues nearby for immediate intervention. 5. Present legitimate documentation and remain calm, regardless of provocation. 6. Allow situation to escalate until discriminatory intent is undeniable. 7. Reveal FAA credentials only at the critical moment. Jasmine checked the airport staff schedule that Walter had secretly provided. Victoria would be working gate C12 for the London flight next Thursday morning. Perfect. She called Lawrence on their secure line. "I've set the date," she informed him. "Next Thursday, 8:45 a.m. flight to London from gate C12. Lawrence's voice was tense. "Are you certain this is necessary? The evidence you've already gathered is substantial." "It's compelling but not conclusive," Jasmine replied. "They could still claim these were isolated incidents or misunderstandings. We need to demonstrate that this is systematic discrimination endorsed by management." After a pause, Lawrence agreed. "I'll arrange for backup. 2 agents in plain clothes positioned near the gate, another 2 at security. They'll intervene only on your signal. I'll wear my standard recording equipment plus 2 backups," Jasmine added. "If Victoria follows the pattern we've documented, she'll claim there's an issue with my passport. When she escalates to Ronald, we'll have them both on record." Lawrence's concern was evident even through the phone. "And if they discover your identity prematurely?" "They won't," Jasmine assured him, more confidently than she felt. "I've maintained my cover for a month. 1 more day won't be a problem." After finalizing the details with Lawrence, Jasmine sent a message to Nathan, knowing he frequently flew to London for business. As she'd hoped, he replied that he was booked on the same flight. Nathan had become an unwitting ally in her investigation, providing context and background that helped Jasmine understand the airport's dynamics. Having him present during the confrontation would add another credible witness. The days leading up to Thursday passed with excruciating slowness. Jasmine continued her regular observations, but her focus was now on the upcoming operation. She reviewed her evidence repeatedly, ensuring nothing had been overlooked. On Wednesday evening, she carefully packed her carry-on with her real passport, FAA credentials, and a change of clothes. Though this was technically a staged flight for her investigation, Jasmine realized she might actually end up in London if the operation extended beyond her planned timeline. She checked her recording equipment one final time, ensuring batteries were charged and memory cards were empty. Then she called Danielle. "Hey sis," she said when Danielle answered. "Just wanted to check in." "Everything okay?" Danielle asked, picking up on something in Jasmine's voice. "Yes," Jasmine assured her. I might be doing something important tomorrow, something that could help make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to anyone else." "Jay, what are you talking about?" "I can't explain right now," Jasmine replied. "But if all goes well, I'll tell you everything soon. I promise." After hanging up, Jasmine tried to sleep but found herself staring at the ceiling, rehearsing scenarios in her mind. What if Victoria didn't take the bait? What if she recognized Jasmine as an investigator? What if the recording equipment failed? She finally drifted off around 2 a.m., sleeping fitfully until her alarm woke her at 5:30. Jasmine showered, dressed in a professional outfit, and carefully positioned her recording devices, the watch camera on her left wrist, microphone earrings, and a backup camera disguised as a brooch. At 6:45 a.m., she arrived at Jefferson International Airport for what she hoped would be her final undercover assignment. The terminal was already bustling with early morning travelers. Jasmine checked in for her flight without incident. The agent applied the now familiar Priority 3 marking to her boarding pass. The code she had discovered was used to flag passengers for additional scrutiny. At security, she was randomly selected for additional screening, as expected. Jasmine complied calmly, using the opportunity to scan the area for the plainclothes FAA agents Lawrence had promised. She spotted them: a man pretending to tie his shoe, a woman checking her phone, positioned strategically throughout the checkpoint. After clearing security, Jasmine made her way to gate C12. She spotted Victoria immediately. The gate agent's blonde hair pulled back in her characteristic tight bun. Ronald Thompson stood nearby, speaking quietly to Victoria and occasionally glancing at the gathering passengers. Jasmine took a seat with a clear view of the gate desk and activated her recording devices with practiced, subtle movements. Now it was a waiting game. At 7:30, Nathan arrived, spotting her immediately. "London bound?" he asked with a smile, taking the seat beside her. "Yes," Jasmine replied, feeling a twinge of guilt. Nathan had no idea what was about to unfold. "You seem tense," he observed. "Nervous flyer?" "Something like that," Jasmine said vaguely. As they chatted, Jasmine observed Victoria and Gregory at the gate desk. They were clearly using their coded system, examining boarding passes and making notations on their computer. "They're at it again," Nathan murmured, following her gaze. "Watch how differently they treat passengers." Sure enough, white travelers were processed quickly with friendly smiles, while passengers of color faced delays, additional questions, and scrutiny of their documentation. At 8:15, boarding began. First class and priority passengers moved through quickly. Then the general boarding started, organized by zones. "That's us," Nathan said when Zone 3 was called. "Ready?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." They joined the line, moving slowly toward the desk where Victoria stood checking boarding passes. Jasmine's heart pounded as they approached, knowing what was about to happen. Nathan went first, receiving Victoria's standard cold treatment for minority passengers: minimal eye contact, cursory inspection of his boarding pass, a dismissive gesture toward the jet bridge. Then it was Jasmine's turn. She stepped forward, passport and boarding pass extended, recording devices active, backup agents positioned nearby. The moment of confrontation had arrived. Victoria Slater's eyes narrowed the instant Jasmine stepped up to the counter. Recognition flickered across her face, not of Jasmine as an FAA inspector, but as a frequent traveler she'd previously discriminated against. "Boarding pass and passport," Victoria demanded, her tone already hostile. Jasmine presented her documents calmly, maintaining eye contact. Her real passport, not the cover identity she'd been using, was impeccable, recently issued with all security features intact. Victoria snatched the documents, making a show of examining them under the desk light. She flipped through the passport pages slowly, running her finger over the security features, checking and rechecking the photo against Jasmine's face. "Is there a problem?" Jasmine asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Victoria's mouth tightened. "Wait here." She turned to her computer, typing rapidly while occasionally glancing at Jasmine with undisguised suspicion. Other passengers began to queue behind Jasmine, shifting impatiently. "Ma'am, other people need to board," Jasmine pointed out politely. "I said wait," Victoria snapped, loud enough that nearby passengers turned to look. Nathan, who had waited just inside the jet bridge, stepped back out. "Everything okay?" Victoria ignored him completely. "There seems to be an irregularity with your passport," she announced, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Irregularity?" Jasmine questioned. "My passport is valid until 2030. I've traveled internationally with it multiple times." Victoria's eyes hardened. "I need a supervisor to verify this documentation." She pressed a button on her desk phone. "Ronald to Gate C12. Documentation verification needed." While waiting for Ronald, Victoria continued processing other passengers, pointedly ignoring Jasmine, who stood aside, acutely aware of the stares from other travelers. This public humiliation was exactly what her sister had experienced, what countless other passengers had endured. Within minutes, Ronald Thompson appeared, his imposing figure moving efficiently through the terminal. He leaned close as Victoria whispered something to him, occasionally glancing at Jasmine. Ronald approached, radiating authority. "Ma'am, I understand there's an issue with your documentation." "According to your gate agent, yes," Jasmine replied evenly, "though she hasn't specified what the problem is." Ronald held out his hand. "Let me see your passport." Jasmine provided it once more. Like Victoria, Ronald made a show of scrutinizing it from every angle, holding pages up to the light, examining the photo with exaggerated care. "This doesn't look right," he declared without specifying what was wrong. "In what way?" Jasmine pressed. "The security features appear irregular," Ronald stated vaguely, "and the photo doesn't quite match your appearance." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Some passengers were recording the incident on their phones, sensing the tension of the confrontation. Nathan stepped forward. "I've traveled with this woman before. Her documentation has always been fine." Ronald turned a cold gaze toward Nathan. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. Please board the aircraft or step aside." "It does concern me when I see a pattern of certain passengers being treated differently," Nathan replied firmly. "Sir, if you continue to interfere, I'll have security remove you from the gate," Ronald threatened. Jasmine nodded slightly to Nathan, silently asking him to stand down. This was part of her plan. She needed the confrontation to escalate to gather the evidence required. Nathan reluctantly backed away but remained within earshot, his phone now discreetly recording. "My passport is perfectly valid," Jasmine stated clearly. "I'd like to know specifically what irregularity you're claiming to see." Ronald's expression darkened. "Ma'am, we have trained personnel who determine document validity. If we say there's an issue, there's an issue." "Then I'd like to speak to TSA or Customs," Jasmine countered. "They're the federal authorities on passport verification." Victoria stepped around the counter now, standing beside Ronald in a united front. "We don't need to call anyone. We have authority to deny boarding based on suspicious documentation," other passengers began murmuring, some filming openly now. Jasmine noticed one of the undercover FAA agents positioning himself closer, ready to intervene if needed. "The passport is legitimate," Jasmine insisted. "I have secondary identification if that would help." She reached for her purse, deliberately slow and non-threatening. "Don't bother," Victoria said dismissively. "We've seen enough falsified documents to recognize one." "Falsified?" Jasmine's voice rose slightly. "Are you accusing me of traveling with fraudulent identification?" Ronald leaned forward, lowering his voice menacingly. "Listen, you can make this easy or difficult. Either way, you're not boarding this flight." "On what grounds?" Jasmine demanded. "Suspicious documentation and now disruptive behavior," Ronald replied. The final boarding call for the London flight came over the PA system. Most passengers had boarded, leaving the gate area relatively empty except for those watching the confrontation. "This is my official United States passport," Jasmine stated firmly. "I have the right to travel with valid documentation." Victoria's patience visibly snapped. She grabbed the passport from Ronald's hands. "This is obviously fake. The photo doesn't even look like you. You're trying to travel using someone else's identity." "That is absolutely false," Jasmine replied, her calm demeanor unnerving Victoria further. Victoria held the passport up. "No one is fooled by this. Do you think we're idiots?" Before Jasmine could respond, Victoria did something unexpected, something so brazen that gasps erupted from the onlooking passengers. She deliberately tore Jasmine's passport along the binding, then again across the middle. The sound of ripping papers seemed to echo through the suddenly silent gate area. "Oops," Victoria said with a smirk, dropping the shredded pieces onto the counter. "Looks like your documentation had a little accident." The torn fragments of Jasmine's passport, her legitimate, government-issued passport, fluttered onto the counter between them. The microchip embedded in the cover had been split in half. The official holographic seals were bisected. For a moment, Jasmine stood frozen, genuinely shocked despite having anticipated some form of escalation. Victoria had just committed a federal offense by deliberately destroying a U.S. passport. The smirk on Victoria's face confirmed everything the investigation had been working to prove. This wasn't about security or documentation concerns. This was about power, discrimination, and the systematic mistreatment of certain passengers. Ronald looked momentarily alarmed at Victoria's action, but quickly composed himself. "Well, without valid documentation, you definitely won't be traveling today." Nathan had moved closer again, his face a mask of outrage. "You can't do that! That's illegal!" "Sir, final warning," Ronald threatened. "Security is on the way." Indeed, 2 airport security officers were approaching, summoned by another gate agent. It was time. Jasmine had what she needed: irrefutable evidence of deliberate discrimination and destruction of federal documentation, all captured on multiple recording devices. With perfect composure, Jasmine reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew her Federal Aviation Administration badge and identification. She held it up so everyone could see. "Victoria Slater and Ronald Thompson," she announced in a clear, authoritative voice. "I am Jasmine Wilson, Federal Aviation Administration Inspector. This airport is now under immediate investigation for civil rights violations, discriminatory practices, and the willful destruction of federal documents." Victoria's face drained of color as she stared at the official badge. Ronald took an involuntary step backward. "I have been conducting an undercover investigation at this facility for the past month," Jasmine continued, her voice carrying through the now silent gate area. "Everything that has occurred here today has been recorded and witnessed by federal agents." She gestured subtly, and the plainclothes FAA agents began converging on the gate. "This operation is now concluded," Jasmine announced, already typing a message to Lawrence on her phone. "Jefferson International Airport is officially under federal investigation." The shocked silence that followed Jasmine's revelation lasted only seconds before erupting into chaos. Victoria's smirk vanished, replaced by wide-eyed panic. "You can't, I didn't," she stammered, her gaze darting between Jasmine's FAA badge and the torn passport on the counter. Ronald's reaction was different. He immediately turned to flee. He made it 3 steps before colliding with one of the plainclothes FAA agents who had been posing as a passenger. "Going somewhere, Mr. Thompson?" the agent asked, displaying his own credentials. Throughout the gate area, other undercover agents revealed themselves, securing exits and approaching the airline staff. Passengers who had been filming the confrontation continued recording, creating dozens of additional witnesses to the unfolding scene. Nathan stood frozen, his expression a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. "You're an investigator?" he finally managed. Jasmine nodded slightly but remained focused on the operation. She activated her phone's speaker as Lawrence Bennett came on the line. "This is Lawrence Bennett, Deputy Director of Compliance, Federal Aviation Administration," his authoritative voice announced. "Is the situation contained, Inspector Wilson?" "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied. "Subjects are secured, and evidence has been preserved." "Excellent. Airport security has been notified of our operation. Federal agents will be taking control of the scene." As if on cue, several uniformed TSA officers and airport security personnel arrived, initially appearing confused about who was in charge. "This is a federal operation," Jasmine informed them, displaying her credentials again. "These airline employees are being investigated for civil rights violations and destruction of federal documents." The head of airport security, a tall man with a military bearing, stepped forward. "We weren't informed of any federal operation at our facility. That was by design," Jasmine explained. We had reason to believe airport management might be complicit in these violations. More commotion erupted as additional federal agents arrived, quickly establishing a perimeter around the gate area. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation were being interviewed, many eagerly sharing their own recordings of the incident. Victoria, still standing behind the counter, suddenly seemed to recover from her shock.
This is ridiculous. I was just doing my job. That passport looked suspicious.
One of the federal agents carefully collected the torn pieces of Jasmine's passport, placing them in an evidence bag.
Ma'am, deliberately destroying a United States passport is a federal offense.
I didn't know she was with the FAA, Victoria protested, her voice rising hysterically.
That's rather the point,
Jasmine replied evenly. You didn't know I was a federal inspector, yet you still discriminated against me and destroyed my legitimate documentation, just as you've done to countless other passengers. News of the confrontation spread through the airport with remarkable speed. Passengers pulled out phones, recording and streaming. Airport staff gathered at a distance, whispering among themselves. Nathan approached Jasmine cautiously.
All those questions, all those conversations we had, were part of my investigation,
Jasmine acknowledged.
I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth.
Rather than appearing angry, Nathan's expression shifted to one of profound relief.
So someone was finally listening. Someone was paying attention.
Yes, Jasmine assured him, and your insights were invaluable. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the terminal entrance. Airport Director Harold Parker had arrived, flanked by security personnel and looking furious.
What is the meaning of this? He demanded, striding toward Jasmine. Who authorized a federal operation at my airport without my knowledge?
Lawrence Bennett stepped forward, having just arrived from Washington.
I did, Mr. Parker. Federal Aviation Administration.
This is outrageous, Parker sputtered.
You can't just…
We can and we have, Lawrence interrupted firmly. We have documented evidence of systematic discrimination, civil rights violations, and now the destruction of federal documents. Your airport is being placed under temporary federal supervision, effective immediately. Parker's face flushed with anger.
Based on what? One incident?
Based on 3 months of investigation, Jasmine corrected. Over 100 documented incidents, recorded evidence of discriminatory policies and practices, testimonies from passengers and staff.
And who exactly are you? Parker demanded.
Inspector Jasmine Wilson, FAA Compliance Division, she replied, her voice steady and confident. I've been working undercover at your facility for the past month, documenting your staff's treatment of minority passengers. Parker's expression shifted subtly, from outrage to calculation. Surely we can discuss this privately, he suggested, lowering his voice. There's no need for this public spectacle. I disagree, Jasmine replied. The discrimination your staff inflicted was public. The humiliation passengers suffered was public. The accountability should be public too. By now, media vans had begun arriving outside the terminal, alerted by passengers' social media posts about the confrontation. Federal agents were escorting Victoria, Gregory, Ronald, and other implicated staff to a secure area for questioning. Throughout the terminal, passengers began approaching Jasmine and the other agents, eager to share their own experiences of discrimination at Jefferson International. What had begun as an investigation into specific incidents was rapidly expanding into a broader reckoning. Walter the janitor appeared at the periphery of the scene, watching with quiet satisfaction. When Jasmine spotted him, he gave her a knowing nod. He had suspected all along that she wasn't just a regular passenger. As the immediate chaos began to organize into a structured federal operation, Jasmine found a quiet moment to call her sister.
Danny,
she said when Danielle answered.
Remember how I said I was doing something important today?
Yes.
Jay, what's going on? There are news reports about some kind of federal raid at Jefferson Airport.
Not a raid exactly, Jasmine explained.
An investigation into what happened to you last year and to hundreds of other passengers.
There was a moment of silence on the line.
You were investigating the airport all this time?
Yes, Jasmine confirmed. And today, we finally got the evidence we needed.
Is that why that gate agent tore up someone's passport?
It's all over social media." Jasmine took a deep breath. "That someone was me, Danny. I was undercover," Danielle gasped. "Oh my God, Jay. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Jasmine assured her. "Better than fine, actually. We did it. We proved what was happening. Things are going to change here." As she ended the call, Jasmine felt a complex mixture of emotions: professional triumph, personal vindication, lingering anger at what she'd witnessed, and exhaustion from the intensity of the past month. Lawrence approached, resting a hand briefly on her shoulder. "Excellent work, Inspector Wilson. Truly outstanding." "Thank you, sir," Jasmine replied. "What happens now?" "Now?" Lawrence gestured to the activity surrounding them. "Federal agents interviewing witnesses, collecting evidence, establishing control. Now justice unfolds." 3 months after the dramatic confrontation at Jefferson International Airport, Jasmine Wilson sat before a congressional subcommittee on transportation and civil rights. The wood-paneled hearing room was packed with legislators, media representatives, and members of the public. "Inspector Wilson," the committee chairwoman began, "could you summarize for us the findings of your investigation?" Jasmine leaned toward the microphone. "Our investigation documented systematic discrimination against minority passengers, particularly black travelers, at Jefferson International Airport. This discrimination was not the result of individual bias, but was an organized, policy-driven practice endorsed by airport management." The evidence Jasmine had gathered had proven more extensive and damning than even she had anticipated. In the days following the confrontation, additional FAA investigators had uncovered a trove of internal communications confirming that the discriminatory practices were deliberately implemented to create artificially impressive processing times and passenger satisfaction metrics, but only for certain passengers. "And these practices were explicitly directed by airport management?" a congressman asked. "Yes, sir," Jasmine confirmed. Airport Director Harold Parker implemented a bonus structure that rewarded staff for processing passengers quickly. Simultaneously, Supervisor Ronald Thompson trained staff to deliberately delay and obstruct minority passengers, creating a two-tier system of service. The investigation had expanded beyond Jefferson International. Similar patterns had been identified at 4 other major airports across the country, leading to a nationwide review of airport practices and policies. Victoria Slater, Gregory Howard, Ronald Thompson, and Harold Parker had all been charged with various federal offenses, including civil rights violations and, in Victoria's case, destruction of federal documents. Their trials were pending, but the evidence against them was overwhelming. After concluding her testimony, Jasmine exited the Capitol building to find Nathan Reed waiting for her. In the months since the investigation concluded, Nathan had become an outspoken advocate for passenger rights, working with a nonprofit organization focused on transportation equality. "How did it go in there?" he asked as they walked together through the crisp autumn air. "They listened," Jasmine replied. "Really listened. The committee is recommending standardized training and oversight protocols for all federally regulated airports." Nathan nodded approvingly. "Walter just received his whistleblower award, by the way. After 15 years of watching discrimination happen right in front of him, he finally got to help stop it." Walter Johnson, the observant janitor who had provided crucial information during Jasmine's investigation, had been recognized for his role in exposing the discriminatory practices. His testimony had been particularly powerful during the preliminary hearings. "What about you?" Nathan asked. "I heard rumors about a promotion." Jasmine smiled. "It's official as of this morning. I'll be heading a new FAA division focused on equal treatment in air travel. We'll be implementing the new training and oversight protocols, conducting regular undercover assessments, and ensuring complaints are properly investigated." The promotion was a professional triumph, but for Jasmine, the personal satisfaction of creating real change was far more meaningful. The systematic discrimination that had humiliated her sister and countless others was being dismantled, replaced with structures designed to ensure equal treatment for all passengers. 2 weeks later, Jasmine returned to Jefferson International Airport, not undercover this time, but as herself. The changes were immediately apparent. New management had been installed. The staff was noticeably more diverse. Signs in multiple languages informed passengers of their rights and how to report problems. At gate C12, the very gate where Victoria had torn up her passport, Jasmine paused. A young black woman in an airline uniform was checking boarding passes, greeting each passenger with the same courteous efficiency regardless of their appearance. When Jasmine approached the counter, the gate agent, whose nameplate read Tiffany Jackson, smiled warmly. "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I see your boarding pass?" After verifying Jasmine's documentation, Tiffany hesitated. "Excuse me, but are you Inspector Wilson?" Jasmine was surprised. "Yes, I am." Tiffany's professional demeanor briefly gave way to genuine emotion. "I just wanted to thank you. What you did here created opportunities for people like me. I was hired during the restructuring. Before that, I'd applied 3 times and never even got an interview." The simple interaction affected Jasmine deeply. This was the real impact of her work. Not just punishing wrongdoers, but creating space for positive change. As she boarded her flight, Jasmine reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. From receiving the assignment from Lawrence, through the grueling undercover operation, to the dramatic confrontation and now the systemic changes being implemented nationwide. She thought about her sister Danielle, who had found healing and closure through the investigation's outcome. About Nathan, who had channeled his experiences into advocacy. About Walter, whose quiet observations had finally been heard and valued. Settling into her seat, Jasmine gazed out the window at the airport where she had witnessed so much injustice. Now, she was flying not as an undercover inspector documenting discrimination, but simply as herself. A passenger entitled to the same respect and service as everyone else. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Jasmine received a text from Lawrence. "New reports of similar patterns at Chicago International. Interested in consulting on the investigation?" Jasmine smiled to herself. There was still work to be done, more justice to be pursued. But today's flight was just for her. A moment to appreciate how standing up against one act of injustice could create ripples of change extending far beyond what she had initially imagined. The plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the clear blue sky, carrying Jasmine toward new horizons, both literal and figurative. As Jefferson International Airport receded below her, she felt not just the satisfaction of a job well done, but the profound hope that comes from witnessing real, meaningful change. Have you ever stood up against injustice or witnessed someone else do so? What impact did that moment create in your life or community? Comment below with your experiences of speaking truth to power. If this story of determination and justice inspired you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more true stories of everyday heroes making a difference. Share this video with someone who might need a reminder that one person's courage can create lasting change. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most powerful tool against discrimination is simply refusing to remain silent. This story reminds us that systemic discrimination often thrives in shadows, protected by those who benefit from unequal treatment. Jasmine's investigation reveals how prejudice can become institutionalized, creating 2-tiered systems that deny dignity to targeted groups. Her courage teaches us that documentation is powerful. Recording evidence turns isolated incidents into undeniable patterns. The narrative shows how discrimination impacts victims psychologically, causing anxiety, frustration, and feelings of powerlessness. Yet it also demonstrates how individual determination can dismantle unjust systems. Jasmine's commitment to methodical investigation rather than immediate confrontation ultimately created more lasting change. Perhaps most importantly, this story highlights that accountability must be public. When discrimination occurs openly, justice must follow the same path. True change requires both punishing wrongdoing and creating opportunities for those previously excluded. As Walter, Nathan, and others show, allies are essential in this process, whether they're insiders providing crucial information or witnesses refusing to look away. The transformation of Jefferson International Airport stands as testimony that systemic problems require systemic solutions, and that one person's refusal to accept injustice can spark nationwide change. Have you ever witnessed discrimination and wished you could do something about it? Share your experiences in the comments below. What small steps can each of us take in our daily lives to stand against racism and build more equitable communities? If this story moved you, please hit that like button to help others find it. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of courage against discrimination, and share this video with someone who needs inspiration to speak up against injustice. Thank you for watching, and remember, change begins when we refuse to accept the unacceptable.